We live in a time, and hopefully you can tell that we love America. We love the freedoms. We love our constitutional rights to assemble. We love what the Constitution has for us, and we honor them. I really was hoping that Brother Carl would be here today. He is 89? He's 89 years old. And Brett and Ashley and I were having a discussion the other night that Brother Carl is a unique individual. He is one of the few that has lived through World War I and World War II and the Korean conflict and the Vietnam War. He also had lived through the Great Depression and all of the things he, if anyone, has seen how America has changed and how America has evolved. It has been Brother Carl. And many of you have recognized, and Sister Helen will point out to you, that Brother Carl has a hard time remembering day-to-day things. And Kathy told me a story, not to sell her goods on the street, but just to tell you some things. She told me this week that every time that Sister Helen gets up to go somewhere, Brother Carl gets up and picks up his Bible and gets ready to head out the door. And she said, well, we're not going to church. He said, I just want to be ready in case we go. I love church. I love God. And if most of us were like Brother Carl, I just want to be ready in case we get a chance to go, we'd all a whole lot be deeper in our spiritual life. But if you ever have the chance to sit and talk with Brother Carl, his memories of World War II and the memories of what he went through. Now, Sister Judy, I know he has one Purple Heart, right? He has two. That's what I thought. I just didn't want to misstate the facts, okay? But Brother Carl has two Purple Hearts. Very few soldiers who have served in the war has a chance to have two Purple Hearts, but Brother Carl has two. Imagine what he saw. Imagine what he went through. Imagine those things, and imagine what he went through. I was never so pleased as to see how when the government was on its hiatus and there was a monument in Washington built to the veterans of World War II, and those veterans still had the determination that they were going to go up and they were going to see that monument, whether the government said it was shut down or not, they were going in. And that's just the tenacity that has really paid the price for all of us to experience the freedoms that we have here today. I know so far we seem kind of somber, but I do want to share with you a story. Don't believe it's really true, but I do want to share with you this story. We ask ourselves, why do people do what they do? Okay? I was at a meeting one night, and we were beginning to try to make rules to keep people from doing stuff, okay? And finally somebody just said, what are you doing? What are you trying to do? And I said, we're trying to make these rules so that nobody will get hurt, or nobody will begin to do something that is just really stupid. And he looked at me and he said, Pastor Lynn, do you realize you can't fix stupid? You just can't fix it. And so with all that being said, this may seem kind of crazy to you and kind of an idiot kind of thing, but I've often asked myself, why do people do what they do? Especially with the Muslim people. Why would they drop bombs on themselves? Why would they begin to go and do suicide attacks? Why would they want to do something, in my opinion, to bring harm to themselves that is very crazy, very, very ludicrous, very just, in all honesty, stupid? Why do they do that? Well, as I began to do some research this week, I found out that they do it because of the fact is that if they kill themselves or they hurt themselves or they kill themselves as they do something against the infidel, which is you and I, the Christian faith, then they have a promise of paradise, and they have a promise of, in the Muslim terminology, of 72 virgins. So let me tell you this story, and then you'll see where it goes from there. As SEAL Team 6 was beginning to invade Osama bin Laden's territory, as they were beginning to press in, they knew that they had him in their sights, and they knew they were about to take Osama bin Laden out. As they shot him, there was a transition in Osama bin Laden's life from this earth to the other life. And as he began to enter into what he called paradise, he was greeted at the gate by Peter. And as Peter greeted him at the gate, the next thing, the people standing behind Peter was George Washington. George Washington ran up to him and slapped him in the face and said, "How dare you try to hurt America? How dare you attack the nation that I helped conceive?" Patrick Henry, then punched him in the nose and shouted, "You wanted to end America, you wanted to end liberty, but you have failed. You will never succeed." James Madison appeared on the scene and kicked him in the stomach and said, "This is why I ordered the government to provide for the common defense, so we could take you out and you would not destroy America." Bin Laden was subject to many beatings from James Randolph, James Monroe, Thomas Jefferson, and 66 other early Americans began to attack him and begin to come after him. And as he writhed with pain on the ground, and as he was beginning to convulse with pain, and as he saw another early American begin to run toward him, he began to look at Peter and he said, "What is going on?" He said, "Didn't you understand that you were going to be greeted with 72 early Virginians?" Sick, wipe it off. Lynn Howell will never tell that story again. Isn't that corny? 72 Virginians were meeting you at the gate. But oh well, some of you got it, some of you didn't. Some of you are still wondering what Pastor Lynn was doing here. And to be honest with you, I don't even know why I said that, other than I thought it was funny. Okay, you like that? All right, okay. Memorial Day. Why do we celebrate Memorial Day? Why do we have Memorial Day? Memorial Day is just more than an excuse for a cookout. A day off from work. A day that was created to honor many Americans, men and women, who died in military service. This focus should be made about those who have given their lives. Brother Carl's friends, those who died in service. Oh, David slept out on me. I will tell you this true story about David. David came home, and many of you know David came home a wreck from the military. I think the military is a great career for young men and young women coming out of the high school with no college to go to. The military is very good. I do not recommend the Marine Corps, but I do think the Air Force, the Navy, and the Army are great branches to serve. The Marine Corps convinces you that you are a fighting man and that above all else you need to fight. When David was beginning to graduate boot camp, and we were at Camp Lejeune. Was that where we were at? No. Paris Island. When we were at Paris Island, a middle-aged man, very stout, very fit, in a press uniform, came up to us and said, "Are you Osteen's mom and dad?" And we said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Do you know that Osteen can sing?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I would recommend that when he gets through with his first 2 years of duty, or as he was beginning to serve his first 2 years of duty, that you recommend that he and encourage him to sign up with the glee clubs. They're at every base, they're at every outpost in the Marine Corps. That you need to encourage David to go sign up and volunteer to sing at the glee club. Because if he volunteers to sing with the glee club the first 2 years, the next 2 years of his service, he can travel the United States and the world singing and be paid to do that, and probably will sing before presidents and rulers of nations." He recognized David's voice was that good. So David went through his training, he went through boot camp, he went through all of those things. They indoctrinated him to come in special forces, and they convinced him that he was a fighting machine. David came home, and I said, "Son," I said, I talked to your what do you call those, boot camp sergeants, drill sergeants, or whatever they are, your first sergeant. And he said that you should be encouraged to join the glee club. And David looked at me and he said, "Dad, you must remember, real men fight. Real men do not sing." And I said, "Sir?" He said, "Real men fight. Real men don't sing." Okay, well then you don't join the glee club. He served his first 2 years of duty. He came home before he was supposed to go off to Iraq, which I hope never happens to your sons, which I hope you never happen to fear. As David was riding in the truck with me one day, he said, "Daddy, they're fixing to send me off to Iraq. I don't know what to do. I really don't want to go." And I looked at him and said, "Real men fight. Real men don't sing." But saying all of that to say that he saw things that I hope you and I never seen. He witnessed things that you and I will never have to witness. The Marine Corps does have one thing that I agree with, that there is never no one left behind. And I appreciate Brother Carl's, Brother Dave's, Brother David, my David, Brother Bob, and any of you who have served in the military service and have came home. We give you honor and we give you praise today because you are alive and you fight to keep our freedom. And we celebrate you today and we honor you today. And we fly those flags high in honor of those who have gave their life. But David and Kathy have a tendency to horseplay. Anybody ever have a tendency to horseplay with your kids? Kathy does a lot of horseplay with her kids. And as David and her were out there horseplay and they were wrestling, she was about to take David to the ground. And David reached underneath her and picked her up. And David looked at her, or David Kathy yelled at David and said, "Put me down, you're going to hurt your back." In that instance, before anything else other would come out of David's mouth was this: "Mama, do you know how much a dead man weighs?" Just that quick. And when Kathy began to pursue the question, he clammed up, he shut up, and nothing else was ever said. And we've never talked to him about that. How many soldiers have carried their brothers off of a battlefield to safety? How many of them have those scars in their minds that they have to deal with? And yet you and I sit in our chairs. We sit in front of the TV set. We sit in all of those things and we begin to say, "Oh my, oh my, oh my, isn't war bad?" There are some times that people have to stand up and defend freedom. There are some times that we have to stand up and say what is right and what is wrong, and we will go everywhere we have to go, or we will go anywhere we have to go to protect the freedoms and liberties that God so chose for us to live. You also have to understand that one of my most favorite quotes, and one of the things I read of a young man, or an older man who wrote this quote: "All it takes for evil to triumph is when good men sit by and do nothing. The day of sitting by and doing nothing is over with in the kingdom of God. The day of sitting by and just letting Satan have his way and letting the world rule over us is wrong." I want you to hear me when I say this today. There are certain sins in the Bible that are wrong. It is wrong. Homosexuality is wrong. Abortion is wrong. Those things in which we hold to are those things in which the world is trying to convince us is okay. It is not okay in the kingdom of God. And if the Christian church don't stand up and take a stand against abortion and homosexuality and all of those other things that are rampant in our world, then we will silence our voice and we will no longer be able to carry the cross of Calvary and win the lost of Jesus Christ. It is time we stand up and do something and conquer evil. We love the sinner, but we hate the sin. We love the people who they are, or we love the people, and we know that God has a purpose and a destiny. And I don't know what causes people to do what they do. I can't answer that. But what I will tell you to this is that the love of Jesus Christ in an encounter with God can change a person's heart and can begin to can not only change their heart, but change their lifestyle and change their whole perspective in life. God's love changed me. God's love changed you. It's okay to have memories. It's okay to build memorials. It is okay. I understand the Vietnam Memorial is a fantastic site, and it is one of the most. It is the war that carries the most stigmatism of any other war. Did you know that this year is the 50th anniversary of that war? Do you realize that there are people not saying it? And when U.S. veterans of the Vietnam War was asked why they do not do more, why it's not being honored, and it is said because they don't want to mention it, because in America's eyes it was a war of disgrace. Those men who fought in that war do not feel like they fought with the esteem that those who fought in World War I and World War II and in Korea War. Well, I'm here to tell you today that those Vietnam vets and those men who have fought in Iraq and Afghanistan earn just as much respect as those who fought in World War I and World War II. They were sent there by our government for the protection of freedom, and if we don't applaud them, if we don't stand up and give them glory and honor, then no one else will. I will gladly fly the American flag. I will gladly praise those who served in the military for my protection. Why? Because it is a fight worth dying for, and they would gladly sell themselves or give themselves to go and fight a war that they did not cause, because they know they are fighting for their freedom. And one of those freedoms is to be able to assemble assemble in a place as this and worship a sovereign God and give Him glory and honor and praise for everything He's done in our lives. That's why we celebrate Memorial Day. It's not to have a cookout. It's not to bake a slab of ribs. It's not to get a Nathan's hot dog. But it is to honor God and those who gave their lives for us. That's why we celebrate Memorial Day today. Amen. Come on, give Him glory and honor and praise. Turn in your Bibles to Joshua the 24th chapter. Joshua the 4th chapter. We build memorials to remember things. There is an Eagle Scout in Myakka that has been with, or a young man who's trying to get his Eagle Scout, that has been with us from the very inception of Cub Scouts here at the Family Worship Center. He would like to build an Eagle project, or his Eagle Scout project. He would like to do it here at MFWC. And what he would like to do is a memorial garden where people could take the ashes of a loved one and put them encased and set them around so that people could come. If it all works out in his mind, he would like to build a glider and a gazebo kind of deal where people could come and sit and just honor the loved ones who have gone on before. Many of you, my mom respectfully goes to the cemetery of Verna Bethany to honor my aunt, and the cemetery at Onika to honor Granny Ruby. And many of you have loved ones, and you honor them and go to cemeteries and just to sit and be near them and to honor them and memorialize them. We build monuments to honor presidents and Mount Rushmore. We build memorials such as the World War II Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial. And all of those are places. I've never been to Washington, D.C., but I would love to go. I'm a history buff. I love American history. I would like to go to the place of the Liberty Bell. Where's that? Massachusetts, I think it is. Pennsylvania. I would love to go to those places. I would love to walk the streets where Ben Franklin walked and all of those who authored the Constitution. I would love to get a first-hand view of what those places were like. Probably never will, and it's okay. I love to sit down and read the writings and the writings of those great men as they penned and protected freedom and how God honored them. And it's okay to memorialize them. But what is your monument? What is your memorial? What is special to you? See, we all have to have those places in our mind where we can go to begin to thank God for what He's done in our life. The blessings that He's had. But what happens in our Christianity a lot of times is our memories are short. We forget the blessings that God has put on our life. We forget the times He's healed us. We forget the times that He's financially bailed us out. We forget the time that He's done miracles in our life. And we really forget about the goodness and the mercies and the great things that God has done. I had a preacher friend of mine, and he began to have his first pastorate. And as he began to leave there, he looked at me and he said, "Hey," he said, "can you get a couple of your men and can you make a run to me to Brooksville?" And I said, "Sure, why?" He said, the denomination is selling the grounds. He said, and out back on the property line is a rock that I would like to bring down. And I said, "Why do you want to bring a rock?" And he said, "I just want to bring a rock. Can you come with me and help me get it?" Yeah. So Spud Carbo, Daryl Maynard, and I loaded up in his truck, and we went to Brooksville. Danny, when we pulled up there behind that churchyard, it wasn't a rock. It was a rock. Okay? And we began to look, how are we going to get this thing on there? And so, of course, Daryl's got a great heart, and many of you know Spud. He's got a good heart, but he's a little contrary sometimes. And he's scratching his head going, "Why in the world do we want to bring this thing to Myakka? I don't understand." So I stepped behind the corner and I said, "Tony," see, I told you who it was. I said, what makes this big rock so special? And he said, "Pastor Lynn, every morning after my wife went off to work, the kids went to school, I went out there to that rock. And I would kneel down beside that rock or behind that rock, and I would cry out to God. And some of the most special times that I've ever had preparing for sermons or praying out to God was at this rock. And I promised God that wherever I go, I'll take this rock. I said, well, I hope you don't plan moving anytime soon. So we loaded his rock and we loaded it on the trailer and we brought it here and we unrolled it. And many a time I would pull up to visit him and he'd be out there beside that rock beginning to pray. Just seeking God. And sometimes I'd even join him out there at that rock. And you know, that was a place of solitude. My rock is next door. In the early days of the Family Worship Center, my dad had took the barn and cut out a hole so I could park our truck underneath there. And many times I would go back there and get between the truck and the barn, and I would just cry out to God. My place of remembrance, my memorial was the barn over there. Once in a while, my mom will see the truck over there and she'll call and say, what are you doing? Oh, just out in the barn. Hopefully she knows I'm just over there praying, going back to where I really knew I got a hold of God. As we find our places, as we begin to find those special places, we never need to forget those special places. One day the dreaded phone call came. I'm leaving Myakka. Okay. He said, can you come over and help me load some stuff? I said, okay. And as we drove up there, and I said, okay, want me to help you unload the shed? No, I got the shed. I said, you want me to help you unload the Sunday school room? No, I got the Sunday school room. You want me to help you load that rock, right? He said, yeah. How are we going to load it? I said, I don't know. We backed the trailer up and we began to maneuver around a little bit. And I don't know exactly whether it was an angel or just somebody who wanted a cool drink of water. But Brother Ronnie, somebody happened to show up with a front end loader. And come over and he said, he recognized me. And he said, Pastor Lynn, he said, is the church open? I need a cold drink of water. And Tony Taylor looked at him and smiled real big and said, better yet, would you like a soft drink? He said, I'll go in and fix you something real cold to drink. Tony ran into the trailer and came back. And he said, bud, this sure is good. Tony said, you want a refill? He said, yeah, I think I do. Tony gave him another one. He said, thank you. I said, whoa, wait a minute. Before you leave here with that loader, you see that rock right there? We need to put that rock on that trailer. He said, not a problem. You say, no, isn't that crazy for a preacher to take a rock wherever he goes? Can't you find God anywhere? But you know what's amazing to me? Our nation, and rightfully so, will spend millions of dollars erecting monuments to presidents, erecting monuments to people, erecting monuments to those who've served in the war. But what kind of monuments have we erected to God? How many God monuments have we set to God? How many altars? How many things have we built to honor God? What is special in your life that you honor God with? What is special in your life? And why are monuments so important? Why are places of remembrance so important? Well, let's look into it and let's see what happens. Read Joshua 4, please. We'll start at the first verse and probably read down to probably read the whole chapter. And it came to pass that when all the people had completely crossed over the Jordan, that the Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, take for yourselves 12 men from the people, 1 man from every tribe, and command them, saying, take for yourselves 12 stones from here, out of the midst of the Jordan, from the place where the priest's feet stood firm, and you shall carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place where you lodge tonight. Then Joshua called the 12 men whom he had appointed from the children of Israel, 1 man from every tribe. And Joshua said to them, cross over before you the ark of your God. And in the midst of the Jordan, each one of you take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel. This may be a sign among you when your children ask in time to come, saying, what do these stones mean? Look at your neighbor and say that to me. What do these stones mean? Say that again. What do these stones mean? Then you shall answer them, them that the waters of the Jordans were cut off before the ark and the covenant of the Lord when it crossed over the Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be a memorial for all the children of Israel forever. And the children of Israel did so, just as Joshua commanded, and took up the 12 stones from the midst of the Jordan. And the Lord had spoken to Joshua according to the number of tribes of the children of Israel, and carried over with them to the place where they lodged, and laid them down there. Then Joshua set up the 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests who bore the Ark of the Covenant stood. And there they are to this day. Say this with me. They lasted. What do these stones mean? And the next phrase you need to remember is, they're still here today. So the priests who bore the ark stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished, and the Lord had commanded Joshua to speak to the people according to all that Moses has commanded. And Joshua and the people hurried, and it crossed over. Then it came to pass, when all the people had completely crossed over, and the ark of the Lord and the priests crossed over in the presence of the people, and the men of Reuben, the men of Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh crossed over armed before the children of Israel. And Moses had spoken to them as Moses had spoken to them, about 40,000 prepared for war crossed over before the Lord for the battle to the plains of Jericho. And on that day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him as they had feared Moses all the days of his life. Then the Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, Command the priests who bear the ark of the testimony to come up from the Jordan. And Joshua therefore commanded the priests, saying, Come up from the Jordan. And it came to pass, when the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord had come from the midst of the Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet had touched dry ground, that the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and overflowed its banks as before. Say this with me. Things are restored. You have to remember, what do these stones mean? What do these stones mean? And things are restored. And it came to pass, 19, and then the people came up from the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and camped in Gilgad on the east border of Jericho. And those 12 stones which they had took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up in Gilgad. And then he spoke to the children of Israel, saying, When your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What are these stones? Say this with me. What are these stones? Then you shall let your children know, saying, Israel crossed over this Jordan on dry land. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan before you until you had crossed over, as the Lord your God did the Red Sea, which he dried up before until we had crossed over. That all the people of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord, that it is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever. A lot of times, God instructed Joshua to have the Israelites bring stones, so that these stones would be a reminder to what God had done, and would be a point of question for what these stones meant. So I need 12 volunteers today. Who's going to help me? I need 12 men. There's 8 center blocks and 4. I need you to bring these blocks in, okay? So you get a picture of what happened. You get a picture. Okay, all right. Now, John Jay, you're a brick mason, so we want to lay those in a foundation where they'll stack, okay? All right. All right. No, stack them up, John Jay. 2 and 2. Oh, there you go. Okay, that's awesome. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, men. So imagine, if you will, go back in time with me and imagine the children of Israel crossing Jordan, and they were supposed to get 12 stones. These are blocks, not stones. didn't think that we could move the boulders that I really saw to bring to you today, that I would have liked to have piled in here. But the blocks will work as a symbol of what I want to show you today. If we were to leave these blocks in this church, in this place, no doubt, till next Sunday, how many children do you think would ask the question, what are they doing here? How many adults that are not here this morning would come in and look at this stack of blocks and say, what are they doing here? It would be a point of discussion and would be a point of conversation, I guess, is what it would be. The adults would say, what is that crazy Pastor Lynn doing with that stock of blocks in the middle of the church house? What lame brain idea did he come up with? Your children, however, would come with an open mind and would probably say this question: Mommy, Daddy, what are they doing here? Why are they here? You see, no different than what the Lord had extended to Joshua and told him what to do. Take those 12 stones out of the Jordan River, the second time that God had did a miracle with water, the second time that God had receded the waters for them to walk across on, and take them out and put them in the plain where you lodge and begin to stack them so that when the children see them, they can tell you, what do these mean? How many of your children have asked you, Mama, what does the Statue of Liberty mean? Daddy, what's so important about the Constitution of the United States? Grandma, what does really the flag stand for? I would hope, in Brother Carl's case, he probably never shows them, because David doesn't show his, and some of you military men doesn't show yours. But wouldn't it be neat if Sister Judy was just happened to sneak one of them purple hearts to Hannah one day? And have Hannah take it, and Sister Judy kind of plugging her along, or kind of or encouraging her along. Go to Grandpa Carl. Ask him what this means. Ask him to explain the Purple Heart. That'd be a conversation I'd like to overhear. There's a picture in our house of Kathy's grandfather, I believe, or great-great-grandfather, with an oxen cart. Great-great-grandfather, excuse me. Great-grandfather. I'll get it right one minute. But it's in an oxen cart, and it's got pans and dishes hanging from it. And it's coming down the streets of Arcadia before the big fire that Arcadia wiped out the downtown of Arcadia. It's in the old brick streets, and the cart's coming down with all the oxen. And one day, Judy Head Fred looked up at that picture and said, "Who is that? And what are they doing?" Kathy was able to sit down and tell Tootie Fred about the heritage that her family has and about how the struggles they had in the early days. All your family has struggles. All your family has things to do. All your family has memories. I think about things. I think about times. I think about events, and I begin to look at stuff, and I begin to sense them, and I begin to understand the memories that behind them, and I begin to understand just how much heritage we have. April Metter went to a yard sale one day, and when she came back, she had a record. This record would not mean anything to any of you at all but me. And the record was an album of a group called the Bluegrass Gospel Train. Okay? The picture was taken of they were standing in front of the old locomotive that's at the historical site. I'll tell you how dated this was. They all had them leisure suits, you know what I mean? With a polyester leisure suits with the open shirt they put over the collar, and they all thought they were cool, okay? We got a record, we're here posing for an album, and we were cool, okay? And I'll tell you how that is, because I will tell you all of those people that were involved with that record, okay? All right, that record means nothing to you. But it is one of my most prized possessions. It sits on my desk and above that. And this morning, in fact, is in the wee hours of the morning before I got the call about Shad Graver, I pulled that record down and I was looking at that record and I was holding it tight. And the reason why that record is a monument for me, the reason why that record held so much for me, the reason why I hope that one day a lizard will come into the office and look at me and say, Papa, why is that record so important? What does that record mean for you? That record means a time when my Uncle Ernie, who was away from God, who came into a prayer meeting one night, and who came in because I was in the back room of my dad's house, and Mom and Dad and everybody was in the front room of the house, and they were singing and they were praying, and us kids didn't want to be left out. We was having church. We were playing church, and I was the pastor. And I'd lay hands on them, and if they didn't fall, I'd shove them down. I'd seen it how the church. I was practicing. Okay? My Uncle Ernie came into that back room because he heard such a commotion going on. And as he stepped into that door, I remember to this day, "You sinner, get in here. You need God." And he just looked at me. And I got him in there. And he played with us, and we prayed. He went back out and told my mom and daddy they needed to do something with me. I'd call him a sinner, which at the time he was. No, didn't mince no words back then. Just call it like it is. I'm not saying that was the seed. But what I am saying is that at a later date in life, my Uncle Ernie found God. And had such a passion for God and had such a passion for music that he got a group of people together and they formed what they called the Bluegrass Gospel Train. Now they thought they were hot stuff, but the only place they really got to sing was prisons. It was a captive audience, you know what I mean? They couldn't go out and really sing anywhere else, you know. But they cut a couple records, and one of the songs on this is that each one of them had a favorite song. And somehow I need, and David, you'll have to help me with this. I want to get that transferred from that big album that nobody has a record player anymore to a CD or an iPod where you can listen to it. But one of the songs my Uncle Ernie did was "I Saw the Light." And Uncle Ernie kept practicing and kept practicing and kept practicing and kept doing it in the recording studio. And the story for that song goes that Sherman Owens looked at the recording engineer and said, "Just record. Just record." So what Uncle Ernie thought was his practice session was really the recording to "I Saw the Light" on that record. What that record means to me is that even while we're trying for perfection, that is some of our best work. Yep. That God does some of his best stuff. The other reason why that record holds memories for me and is a monument to me is that if God can change Uncle Ernie's life and give him a heart for God, he can change me and anybody else. And that God puts people and places together for times in circumstances that you're not even conceived yet. Let me tell you who was the focus of that group. Uncle Ernie, who God took out early, who began to be the main force behind the Bluegrass Gospel Train. He played the stand-up bass. In that group was Eddie Chance. Remember Eddie Chance? County Commissioner of Manatee County for years. If you go down Wauchula Road and you look at all the land Swiftmud owns, or you go to Faulkner Farms where the land starts that Swiftmud owns, you will see the Edwin Chance Memorial, the Eddie Chance Swampland, or whatever they call it. But anyway, that particular tract of land is named after Eddie Chance, and you can't hold this against him. He was one of the first creators of Swiftmud. The third person of that group was a man by the name of Sherman Owens. Anybody ever heard of Sherman Owens? Victory Christian Center. The church now, the Bayside now has assumed at the end of Bee Ridge Road. Out of that group, they began to realize that their focus needed to be more than just singing, that they could make a difference. Eddie entered into the world of politics. Uncle Ernie went home to be with God. Sherman started a church. As Sherman began to build his church, people began to doubt whether or not the church would make it so far out on Bee Ridge Road. And when he went to the bank, this is what the bank told him. We will loan you money to build it, but you have to build it so that it can become a shopping mall, because we don't think it will last. It's one of the neatest designs you've ever been in. Remember that, Sister Judy? You've been in there a time or two. You walk in, and on each side there's this big courtyard with this big fountain and these big palm trees, and there's classrooms and kitchen area on each side, and with all of them with big French doors that open into the courtyard, okay? And it's a cool setup for a church. But it wasn't designed that way by the church. It was designed that way because the bank thought it would fail. I remember pulling in there one day, and I'm not sure who I had with me. I think it was Leroy Carbo. And he said, Pastor Lynn, what are we doing here? I said, we're going to plunder. He said, what is it? I said, it's a church. He said, it don't look like a church. I said, you're right, it don't, Leroy. He said, but why are we here? I said, we're going to plunder. As we opened the doors, this was Leroy's comment. Why did they build it this way? Because men thought that God didn't know what he was doing. Today we're going to close early and let you go home early. And I've rambled a lot today, and we've hit and missed on a lot of things. And there's a lot of things that you can search your souls for. And I'll be really honest, my mind is more with the Graber family than it is here today. I don't know whether you can tell that or not. But you would have to ask this question. What is your legacy? What are you leaving behind? What will your kids ask? When years to come, as people drive down Singletary Road and they look at this building, will their children ask, what is that? And why did they build it there? If we leave these stones in the middle of this ground and we begin to tell our children, why are these stones here? Because men brought them in because of Pastor Lynn said so. But why did Pastor Lynn have them bring them in? Because we need to remember the goodness of God. We need to remember the healing power of God. We need to really remember that God is a God of provision, and that God wants to change your life, and that God wants to do great things in your life. And that we as a people need to have dependency on God. The first time as a church we were going to do a Christmas parade float. And back then we took floats real seriously. And we would take the trailer and put it next door at the house we lived next door, and everybody would come over and everybody would be in and out, and Kathy would be making hot chocolate and that kind of stuff, and we would just spend every night more or less fellowshipping and talking other than really working on the float, but we had a good time together. In one particular Christmas season, a lady came to me, and it was the first Christmas season we were together as a church. She said, I have this vision for our Christmas float. I said, okay, what is it? And she said, we make this big mountain and we put up 3 crosses. And in the middle of this mountain we have these 3 crosses, and we begin to put them out there, and then at the front of it we have a manger scene, so we have the manger to the cross kind of thing and all that stuff. And I said, well, that's a pretty good idea. And so we were sitting in a little circle of a group of men, and one of them looked at me and said, Pastor Lynn, what are we going to do for Christmas float? I said, well, Sister so-and-so has this crazy idea that we need to build this mountain, and we need to put 3 crosses in the middle of it, and we need to put a manger scene on the front of the trailer. But for the life of me, I don't know how we're going to make that mountain. Young man said, oh, Pastor Lynn, that's going to be easy. So what do you mean it's going to be easy? He said, you know I work for an insulation company. I said, yeah. He said, and we got this truck, and it sprays the styrofoam stuff, and you can let it sit, and it gets hard, and you can paint it, and you can mold it, you can do anything. I said, well, okay, that sounds good. I said, so what do we need to do? He said, you just got to construct this mountain out of chicken wire. He said, then you got to wrap it with something so all of the foam don't go through, so it's so heavy. He said, but we can make this mountain. We can make this happen. So I looked at another young man and I said, so what are we going to have to do to make this mountain? He said, I'll pick up the PVC pipe and I'll pick up the chicken wire and we'll wrap it. Or we'll make this mountain. I said, okay. So we began to put it together one night, and we had this monstrosity next door that was just ugly, okay? We had this 8-foot wide trailer. We had fixed it with the PVC pipe so we could wrap our chicken wire. And then everybody knows that mountains aren't round, okay? They're kind of indented. And so men would stand up and fall into the chicken wire to make the gaps in the mountain. It was hilarious, okay? It was really one of them things that you really wouldn't want to be a part of, but it was fun. Especially to see a man body slamming the side of a mountain just to make it perfect for him. So as we began to close down that night, one of the men looked at me and said, well, Pastor Lynn, what are we going to do tomorrow night? And I said, you know what? Kathy's got some old sheets. I think my mom's got some old sheets. We'll wrap that mountain in them old sheets. And we'll have Joe come and we'll spray it with the styrofoam. He looked at me and he said, I really don't think sheets is what we need. I think we need burlap. I said, well, if you want burlap, go get some burlap. So he dropped into Lowe's when Lowe's was just first built, and he pulled it inside, and all Lowe's had was Croker sacks. And Croker sacks were pretty expensive at the time. So he called me and he said, well, Pastor Lynn, what do we want to do? What do we want to do here? I said, well, you wanted burlap. I said, just buy enough Croker sacks and we'll split them in half, and we'll put them on this mountain. He said, Pastor Lynn, that's awful expensive though. I said, well, it don't matter to me. I got sheets. We can wrap it with sheets. He said, yeah. He said, but I think burlap's what we need to do. He said, but I don't know. I'll just come on out there and we'll wrap it with sheets. As he pulled out of Lowe's with Chick-fil-A on one side, and at that time that gas station wasn't there. It was still vacant. He pulled out to go on 70 to make the U-turn to come back. He realized that there was no traffic coming. And he realized that he was the only one pulling out onto 70. And he realized that as he went into the turning lane, in the middle of the medium at the turning lane was a bunch of burlap. Looked like Croker sacks. Looked like a wad of Croker sacks. So he reached down, he grabbed that wad of Croker sacks and threw them in the back of the truck. And he come running up to the driveway. He got out that night and said, guess what, Pastor Lynn? What's that? He said, I got some Croker sacks and I got them for free. I said, how'd you get them for free? He said, they was in the middle of the medium at Highway 70 up there at Lowe's as you come out by Chick-fil-A. I said, are you crazy or something? You stopped in the middle of all that traffic? You could have been killed. Oh no, Pastor Lynn, that's what even more amazing. There was no traffic. There was nobody coming. It was just me and my truck. I was able to get out and throw them in and nobody knew. I said, wow, that's awesome. So we finished up what we were doing. And he said, Pastor Lee, he said, I'm going to go get them Croker sacks and I'm going to start cutting them so we can zip tie them to this chicken wire. I said, okay. As he began to go to the back of his truck and he pulled out his wad of Croker sacks, he began to try to find an end. And burlap just kept coming. And burlap just kept coming. And burlap just kept coming. It wasn't Croker sacks at all. It was a roll of burlap. And he said, Pastor Lynn, look how long this is. And he just kept pulling, and he kept pulling, and he kept pulling. And if I told you this guy's name, you would know his personality. And he was just a kid at heart anyway, right? And so they were all excited. And he goes, well, I don't know. He said, have we got enough? And I said, well, I don't know. So they started wrapping burlap around that big Hamoski of a mountain. They began to wrap it and overlap it and zip tie it and wire it. And as they began, it just kept coming. It just kept coming. And finally one man said, why don't we cut it? No, don't cut it. No, don't cut it. Let's just wrap it. And so they kept wrapping and they kept wrapping and they kept tugging around the crosses. They tucked it in and they kept wrapping and kept wrapping and kept wrapping until they finally got to the last place of burlap. And Brother David, they had 6 inches of burlap left to lap and to seal the deal. Several months ago, The boys of Loving Hands were out here in the portable. And they were helping us clean up, and they found an album of pictures. And as we were going through that album of pictures, one of them said, "Pastor Lynn, what's that?" And pointed to this big monstrosity of a mountain sprayed with styrofoam that we had painted with crosses coming out the top of it, with purple and the American flag and the manger scene at the front of it. And I looked at him and I said, "That's our burlap miracle." He said, "What do you mean?" I recounted to him the story that I had just told you. And he said, "Pastor Lynn, what does that do for you?" I said, "Every time I see that, that gives me the confirmation, that gives me the remembrance that God's a God of provision, and there'll always be enough. And if you'll trust Him, He'll have everything not only that you need, but you desire." So as you go to your mountains of remembrance, as you come and as you celebrate this Memorial Day, don't let it just be about a cookout or a swimming pool party. Don't let it be just about things that go on every day, or a hot dog roast, or going to a movie, or sleeping around the house all day. Whatever you plan on doing is fine. Enjoy your family. I'm not trying to tell you that. But please take time that when your children say, "What is Memorial Day all about?" Tell them that it is about men who gave their life to have the freedoms that they exist. Tell them about what God has done in your life, and make it a true Memorial Day about the goodness of God in your life. Make it about how God has saved you, how God has healed you, how God has provided for you. And let your children know that God is not a God of past things, but God is a God of future things. And what God did back then, He'll certainly do today. If He healed you back then, He'll heal you today. If He provided for you back then, He'll provide for you today. He is a God of the right nows. He's a right now God. And He's a God that deserves all the glory, the praise, and the honor. Stand to your feet today and let's praise and worship God. David, go ahead.
When the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. When the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. So lift your eyes to heaven. There is freedom. So lift your eyes to heaven. There is freedom. Freedom reigns in this place. Showers of mercy and grace falling on every face. There is freedom.
Father God, we thank You for this day. We thank You for this holiday weekend. We thank You for a chance, Lord, to do our memories and to build our memorials. Father God, let every father in this house build a memorial to You, and let us celebrate with the goodness and the kindness of Your hearts and Your lives unto us. Lord, may we pass on to our children when they ask, "What do these stones mean? What do these scars mean? What does this mean to You?" May we recount to them the goodness and the mercy that You've showed to us. Bless us, keep us, honor us, give us a safe and blessed Memorial Day, and Lord, bring us back at the next appointed time. And all God's people said, amen, in the house of God. Couple things I want to remind you of. Please pray for Brother Paul. He's still sick and battling some things. We need to pray for him. Continue to pray for Sister G.K. Miller, that God will do a work in her life. I also brought to you a name last week by the name of Susan Harper. She is a mom that has a little child here that plays upward with us. Her report did not come back as favorable as what we hoped. But I want you to hear me, church. We're a church that has walked through unfavorable reports with people before. And the devil's a liar straight from the pits of hell. And we need to hold these people's names up and pray for them, knowing that God is more than able to heal them. And what God did for Donnie, He'll do for Susan. Bombard heaven for her in Jesus' name and just pray for her. Also, her name is Susan Harper. Also, many of you have smartphones, iPads, or electronic devices. And we are trying to find a way to use those to engage our children. There is a free app on those devices called it's called YouVersion. It's a Bible app. It's called YouVersion. If you do not already have it on your phones, I challenge you to download it. It's a free app. It won't cost you anything. And in the weeks to come, we will be using that app in service to have kind of an interactive thing going on and to begin to engage everybody. So young people are wanting an excuse to use their phone in church, so we're going to give them one. A godly excuse with a godly thing. It's YouVersion. Go download it. It's a free app. With all that being said, have a happy Memorial Day and be blessed. And we will keep you posted on the events of Shad Graber's family. Thank you so much. Have a great day. If you need prayer, we're here for a little bit. Come up and we'll talk with you and minister to you today.
If you're tired and you are thirsty, there is freedom. If you're tired and you are thirsty, there is freedom. So give your all to Jesus. There is freedom.